Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we are talking about a ship that is, in my opinion, the most overhyped ship in this game. If not the most overhyped, I would still argue one of the most overhyped ships in this game. And that is everyone's favorite Tier 10 Soviet battleship that's not the Slava, the Kremlin. The Kremlin is, if you go on forums, Reddit, comment section of any given video talking about battleships or overpowered ships, Kremlin's name always comes up. Now, I will agree that when the Kremlin was first released all the way back in 8.4, sure, that version of Kremlin was pretty busted, along with some of the versions of her during testing. However, it's been quite some time since 8.4. The last time we took a proper standalone video and looked at Kremlin was all the way back, I believe, just about a year ago now. And a lot has changed in a year, and not a lot has really favored the Kremlin in those changes either. So today we're going to take a look at the Kremlin, talk about her stats and how she's played, and my opinion on her right now, and whether or not she's worth grinding to at the moment. So, let's go ahead and take a quick rundown of her stats. Now, the Kremlin is quite a chonky girl, especially if you look at her armor. And in many cases with the Kremlin, it's a good type of chonky. She has a 60mm icebreaker bow, which increases to a 150mm cheek plate. Her belt armor is 430mm thick. On the cheek, at least, on the flat part, it is 410mm thick. And then she has a partial wraparound icebreaker stern that is 150mm in the midsection and 300mm over the steering gears. Her bow and stern are 32mm thick. Now, again, her bow does have that nice icebreaker bow wrapping around. Her stern and bow decks are 32, and her midsection is a whopping 60mm of armor. Now, her citadel is actually exposed, and this is something that you used to hear all the time back in the day about the Kremlin. That it's impossible to citadel the Kremlin. It's not, because her citadel is literally exposed right at the waterline. You catch a flat Kremlin, oh man, a flat broadside Kremlin, you will citadel it as long as you have decent AP, which is something I never really understood, because Kremlin, you play at close range. She's very immaneuverable, and one of the ways you could defeat her is by rushing to her sides. If they were distracted or if their turrets faced the wrong way, then you just shoot them in the sides from close range, and that's a dead Kremlin. Kremlin's release was very fun. Trying to talk about all her weaknesses and stuff, and how people continue to say that she didn't have any weaknesses. But yeah, anyway. So HP to back up that pretty darn good armor scheme is 108,300 HP. Funny enough, that is actually the amount of HP that the French super battleship, the Patrie, gets. And I think that's pretty funny. Now, the Patrie does have lower HP for a super battleship, so it's not like the Kremlin has super battleship HP. The Yushikov, the super Kremlin, has 135,000 HP, somewhere in there for my from my memory, if memory serves me correct. So yeah, pretty healthy girl here. Did overshadow the GK when it came to the HP department, and she also has 46% torpedo damage reduction, which is excellent for a ship that's meant to be played in close, like the Kremlin is meant to. And her guns, she has 9 457mm 18-inch guns. Now, again, they are 457s and not 460, so they cannot overmatch 32mm of armor, but they can overmatch 30mm of armor just fine. Now, with the build that I currently have on my Kremlin, which I'll throw up right here, I do have a 29-second reload time on these guns. That is with the reload module. The base reload time of these guns is 33 seconds. Now, for her HE, it does a maximum damage of 6,500. She has a 45% chance of causing fire on the target, 76mm of pin with her HE shells, and those come out the tubes at 800 meters a second. The AP, which does the maximum damage of 14,500, comes at the tubes at 800 meters a second. And she does have a 20.7 kilometer maximum range with a maximum dispersion of 260 meters and a 180 time of 28.7 seconds. So the turrets, despite being absolutely massive, actually turn pretty darn quick, which is really nice at close range because the Kremlin isn't that maneuverable. Now his shells are of course the Soviet bias AP shells with their nice air drag coefficient and all that jazz that the Soviet shells enjoy. What is interesting is that one of the changes made to Kremlin was a decreasing of her AP shell's maximum damage. It went down from a maximum damage of 15,500 to 14,500, and then we were told the parameters of the projectile were also changed. And that was it. So I'm not sure exactly what they messed with here. It might have been some of the air drag shenanigans and stuff. But the shells still absolutely fly through the air fast, and they have a very flat shell arc. So shooting at close range is very easy. Shooting at medium range is easy. Shooting at any range is generally easy with the Kremlin in terms of aiming and the shells going in the area where you aimed at. I should say at least. The Dispersion, on the other hand, is something else. Now, the Dispersion with the Kremlin, she has the Soviet Battleship Dispersion gimmick where the closer you are to the target, the better your dispersion is, in layman's terms. And that is one of the big downsides of this ship right now. Because outside of 15 kilometers with the Kremlin, good luck. Good frickin' luck hitting anything. The dispersion is god-awful once you get to like 18 kilometers. 16, it's sketchy. 18, good luck hitting anything. 20 kilometers, you're praying at that point. Which, man, not only that, but her main battery gun range too. It's 20 kilometers. 20.5 kilometers. Which is terrible for a tier 10 battleship. And it's not like the GK where, sure, her range is 20 kilometers too, but she has 12 guns. And sure, her dispersion isn't that great either, but you can at least get a pretty good consistent feel for it because it's not changing. You know, the GK's dispersion doesn't become more accurate the closer you get into the ship. It's the same dispersion pattern, so you can get a feel for that, and at range have a pretty decent idea of where you need to generally aim at for the shells to go where you want them to go. But with the Kremlin, you don't get that. And think about how many battles in today's high-tier gameplay last at like 18 kilometers plus. The match you're watching in the background is a pretty darn good example of that. There was a lot of action in the front side of the match, and then when we got toward the end of the match, it just, for the whole midsection, guys, it's 20 kilometers plus. I don't have any spotting, so I can't see anything if it's closer. And so the only thing sighted for a good portion of the match is just the enemy battleships when they're firing. And even when stuff is spotted, a lot of times it's outside of my range because, well, that's how high-tier matches go. This is a super ship game. There's, I think, 3 super ships aside in this match. We got super CVs, super battleships, and super cruisers as well. And yeah, there's just large portions of the match where you're just selling around nowadays, just like, well, I guess I can't really do anything. Because you do have to get in close with the Kremlin in order to really put her to work. And everything's geared for that. The armor's really darn good for, again, close and angled bow tanking. The turrets traverse fast enough to where, again, when you're at close range, you can keep up. The dispersion formula is, again, explicitly set for close-in engagements, but it just doesn't really happen anymore. So, yeah, it's just awkward at times with the Kremlin in random battles. But before I get too far into that, her AA is actually pretty good. It does good damage, good range, but the AA mounts are miserably weak. Her maximum speed with the speed flag equipped is 31 knots. Without the speed flag, it's, I believe, 28 and change. Rudder shift time is 16.3 seconds, and your turning circle radius is that massive 1,090 meter Soviet turning circle radius. Concealment with the module in the build, 13.4 kilometers with both of those. You get 4 charges of a repair party that repairs 649 HP per second for 30 seconds. And her damage cons, again, fast damage con, 11-second action time, 38-second reload time, and that's it for her consumables too. She doesn't have any way to increase her range. You cannot slot the range module in the slot 6. You can only slot the reload module. Can't put the range one in mod slot 6. And you don't have a spotter plane, so there's no way to extend your range that far. Not like you would hit anything past 20 kilometers or anything like that. But again, the ability to at least reach out there would be pretty nice. You know, even GK can mount the spotter plane if they really want to. You know, it won't be ideal, but you can at least get out there, and it's so important to be able to at least reach out to those far ranges in today's random battles, because again, that way you'll at least be able to do something rather than nothing, like you will in ships that don't have that ability. So, if it was like the original Kremlin in today's meta, it probably would still be able to perform decently okay-ish. However, like I said, she's been through quite a few nerfs. Update 8.9, like I mentioned, her AP shell maximum damage was nerfed down to 14,500. Update 9.0, they halved the HP of all her AA mounts, which was really weird. For a very long time, they just focused on nerfing her AA rather than other aspects about the ship. So for a while, it's just like, okay, so only civies are able to counter the Kremlin. Very weird time. Update 9.1, her Sigma was reduced from 1.9 to 1.85. Then update 9.2, her Sigma was once again reduced from 1.85 to 1.80. Now, in layman's terms, for those that don't know, Sigma is the value that determines how the shells exit the barrel. The dispersion value is then what determines how far they fly away from each other once they exit the barrel. So her Sigma used to be 1.9, which is pretty darn good for a battleship. But now it's 1.8, which is kind of in the okay-ish zone. But you also get some really weird salvos, like you'll see toward this end of the match, where I'm 8 kilometers away from I believe it was an Ibuki at the end of this match, and yet I still get screwed over by RNG with the dispersion, which doesn't make sense because, you know, again, with Kremlin, the closer you are to the target, the better dispersion you're supposed to get, yet you can still get screwed over like I did here with these salvos. I would think, since you have to be this close to the target in the first place in order to get this dispersion buff, the dispersion pattern would be, I would think, a little bit more favorable to someone that was willing to push in this close in the game. Now, again, toward the end of the end of the match, you can see the Kremlin come into its prime for like a minute and something. You know, you're in a good spot. Its armor's doing its thing. The guns are doing its thing at close range. But how many games actually have extended durations, extended periods, where for the duration of that time you are within like 10-12 kilometers of each other? In today's meta, not so much. Now, when the Kremlin was first released, thanks to the whole Soviet battleship line being, you know, more close range oriented, and this is before super ships or submarines or anything like that was added into the games tend to be a little bit closer to where the Kremlin could, sure, it wasn't getting up in everybody's face in every single game, but games weren't sitting back at 18 plus kilometers for, you know, 15 minutes of the match back in the day. So she's a lot more potent back then. And nowadays, it's just, no, it just doesn't happen as much anymore. So you're stuck with a ship that's super geared toward close-in engagements that just doesn't find the matches anymore. Now, sure, in competitive settings, Kremlin's a bit more viable. For like ranked, tier 10 ranked, oh yeah, absolutely, Kremlin's a very strong choice. For clan battles, abso-frickin-lutely, Kremlin's a very strong choice. Because the tanking potential in this ship is crazy, especially when you're in a competitive setting with fewer players shooting at you and with fellow players coordinating with you as well. Absolutely, in those cases, it's a very good ship to have. But for random battles, I wouldn't really recommend grinding up to it. Now, the line does certainly have some highlights, the Sinop being one of them. So sure, if you want to test out the line, I'd say at least grind to the Sinop, see if you like that. If you really like the Sinop, then go ahead and grind to the Kremlin. Just understand that there's going to be plenty of matches at high tier where you're just kind of awkward selling around, not really having anything to shoot at, and there's not a lot you can do. Because again, the ship doesn't really have a lot of tools at its disposal. No spotter, no hydro, no radar, nothing like that. Well, funny enough, they were supposed to have radar back in the day. They were messing with this idea of this like CV and battleship only radar for the Soviet battleships. That they had like what I think a 15-kilometer range or something like that. Was pretty funny seeing what they were messing with these ships back in the day. But yeah, so guys, that's my two cents on the Kremlin. Unfortunately, just with the way that the meta's gone, not really worth the grind anymore. Unless again you really enjoy closer engagements and understand that it's not really going to happen too much at higher tier anymore. But if you're looking for a battleship line that'll do you good in random battles, this is not it. I'd certainly recommend the American battleships or the Japanese battleships over the Soviet battleships at the moment. The American ones, they're great at medium to longish range. They're great at medium to close range. Japanese ones are great at long range and do very well in this meta. So those are the two I would certainly go for. Or the British battleships too. They're just kind of good at, well, everything because they're HE spammers. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're getting very close to our 40,000 subscriber milestone. So make sure you subscribe and make sure notifications are turned on because we will be doing a giveaway once that milestone gets hit. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.